Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario, with grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork will commence later this year. Please visit our website at rmroyalty.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website rickackerman.com. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Thanks for inviting me on, Jim.
You've just published a paper asking the question, are the big boys tapped out? What's that all about?
Well, we've just come through an earnings cycle where I would say the news was about as sunny, if not to say thrilling, as it could possibly get. And we saw this in a reaction of some of the stocks. Jeff Bezos became the richest man in the world in just one given day when Amazon shares took a leap. They closed on the 26th of October, somewhere around 970, and 2 days later they were trading up at 1122. So this is not a little thing. It's a huge company with a lot of shares and a float, and you can see the wealth effect. I use that term advisedly in spades. So we've had all these companies basically beat the earnings forecasts or whatever. But I'm thinking that maybe the best news is behind us on earnings. Even before we got to earnings, you could see the effect on the proletarian mind of this idea that companies they're investing in have a global business that could grow immensely with just a little tweak. And we saw that with Netflix. Netflix jacked the subscription price by one measly $1, and the stock went from 176 to whatever it was, 220 in a matter of days. And so whatever additional revenues the company stood to gain by raising their subscription price, the multiplier effect was there to an astounding degree in the share price. I couldn't even calculate how much that added to the store of quote-unquote wealth in this world.
And then, of course, though, we hear if you're expecting returns. A while ago, someone said it would take 300 years to get your investment back in Amazon.
Yeah, that was, I think it was an interview with Sam Zell, a billionaire real estate developer, and as always, he was somewhat attacked on Zero Hedge. Nobody gets out of there unscathed, and they thought he might have been out of his depth. But in reality, he's made a lot of money by simply taking the logical view of things. It's not really that complicated, and Zell mentioned that Amazon, at its current rate of growth, would represent 25% of U.S. GDP within 5 years or something like that. Who knows? Maybe they're on their way. They seem to be dominating more and more retail, and of course, recently there was news that Amazon would have, like they really needed this, the inside track for bidding in doing inside track for doing business with government employees. So it's like they've been on the government's officially approved list they'll be on the officially approved list of vendors, and you give a company like that kind of advantage, and maybe they will own the world.
Well, Amazon just announced they're going to create 1,000 jobs in Vancouver, and that's nothing to do with their plan to open up a second headquarters. They just thought Vancouver, with its high-tech population base and workforce, would be a great place to set up a big office.
Well, it's interesting. If you sort of extrapolate out this statement of Zell's that, another 5 years Amazon would have to be 25% of the U.S. economy. Well, if we were to hypothesize that that's possible, then, maybe Amazon holds the key to reviving America. The Rust Belt in particular, and if they've got branch offices everywhere, it could bring back towns like Schenectady and little places in Maine that used to make shoes and shirts and things. So, I guess to an extent we should be happy of Amazon's success, even though it's displacing quite a bit of the brick and mortar that we've always enjoyed using for shopping.
Well, Walmart said it topped its third quarter estimates, and e-commerce was up 50% for them. So obviously that is the way to go. If you don't have a website and putting out product that way, you simply aren't going to survive.
Yeah, but you can see it's a lot easier to be in the advertising business, which Facebook is. Facebook doesn't have to soil its hands, so to speak, selling actual stuff. They're just out there as a kind of marketer, advertiser. So when you look at the other end of it, Walmart, for instance, it's so hard. Walmart is obviously in a battle with Amazon, but the things that they have to do to stay in the race are really, let's say, they impact on margins. So selling stuff, as Walmart does, winds up being a low margin business where the margins are constantly going even lower, and it's a tough way to make a living when all you got to do is put an app on a phone like Uber did, and all of a sudden you're worth $60 billion.
Of course, Uber just loses money. They haven't made any money yet.
Right, and Uber has just had a very, very large Chinese investor come into the picture, and the idea being this company's really going to assemble a global network of post-taxi cab taxis. In fact, they bought Uber's biggest competitor in Brazil, and they're looking to take enormous control, complete control over this taxi business, so that they basically come to effect and to some degree determine how we get from point A to point B.
And probably sell you ads in the process.
Yeah, they'll be there. You'll be sitting in the back seat, and that's absolutely going to happen. I mean, you're going to be seeing the Uber drivers will have an incentive to make even a little bit more than they're making now by putting something that feeds you ads in the back seat. Absolutely going to happen, just the way it happened at the gas pumps. But those Uber guys better make money while the sun shines, because they're going to be replaced by robotic Google cars in the next 10 years or less.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after the break.
Ackerman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Ackerman's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at ackermanresources.com.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Getting back to self-driving cars and so on, Tokyo plans to have robot cabs up and going when they host the Olympics in a couple of years. How about the rest of the world? Will it be taxis first and long-haul trucks that have these robot drivers before anything else?
Most surely, because it's really being driven by fleet economics. We've seen the air get let out of the balloon in the medallion prices for cabs in pretty much every city. So that's one way that creative destruction has already discounted the onslaught of robotic cars. But as far as the you and I mean, I've got a Lexus now that is, let's see, it's about 18 years old, and I'll just keep driving it forever. So we've got an enormous inventory of cars that are going to have to be replaced before we can really get to universal robotic cars. So that's going to take a long time, but the initial driver will be fleet economics, so that's where we're going to see robotics happen in places where car transport has an income stream associated with it. People are paying for a taxi ride, so that's where the incentives are right now to automate driving.
Well, a lot of people have said once self-driving cars come along, you don't really need to own a car full time. It'll drive you to work, and then you could put that car to work, picking up people and moving goods around during the day while you're at work, and then it'll come take you home and then go off and be a taxi at night all on itself. You're actually a taxi contractor yourself.
I somehow, that all sounds good, but I have trouble seeing that time when my car is out making money for me. It just seems a little too far-fetched, and even though maybe in the technological scheme of things it's not, it might be doable, in the social and political and economic areas, there are a lot of problems with that. But, there'll be so much off-peak pricing.
Also, too, parking garages would likely go out of business because the car doesn't have to be parked near you anymore. It can go off, either go home and park for free at your place, or find a place that isn't metered, or a parking lot, just sit there idle, and then come fetch you when it's time to go home. So
I think that's also true. I'm trying to sort of overlay that on Boulder. I lived in Boulder for 19 years, and the heart of Boulder is a pedestrian mall that runs about 5 blocks, and everybody wants to drive to there and then walk on the mall. So, in that one instance, I don't see brick and mortar getting displaced. They've got, bricks from the 1800s that are all historical artifacts at this point. They're never going to get torn down. They become lovelier and more charming with each year. But I just kind of wonder really how the robotic fleet that makes cars accessible to us when and where we want them is going to just alter the way we shop, the way we park, the way we do things.
Also, everybody predicts with the electric car, the oil and gas business will disappear, but the International Energy Agency says we'll be using 105 million barrels of oil a day by 2040. So it won't increase at the same rate it is right now, but that's the same year that the European Union wants to have nothing but electric cars on the road. China hasn't set a date, but says they have a similar goal. Yet the rest of the world still plans to be using oil and gas because it's still more efficient.
Well, I think anyone who believes that we're going to have that cars are going to be all electric in 10 or 15, 20 years, they better be ready to accept either a lot more nuclear power, and of course Europe, particularly Germany, is moving in the opposite direction. How Germany plans to generate enough wind and solar power to make all its cars go is beyond me to imagine. So you could say, well, over that time maybe we'll solve the cold fusion paradox, and we'll have ways of storing power, particularly solar power, sun power, that make the generation of electricity pollution free. But those are technologies that are still, they're not even on the drawing board, really. They're just, in the case of cold fusion, it's just a sort of hypothetical, it's an impossibility, perhaps.
Well, there is a technology. For example, a high school girl in Vancouver invented a flashlight that just runs off the heat of your hand. However, the battery manufacturers have probably bought the patent for that off her for some enormous sum, and we'll never see the light of day of it.
Well, you may have trouble finding your way around by the light of that flashlight too. We know that I suspect that that the light that you can generate with the heat of your hand is not as good as what you would get from a few AAA batteries. On the other hand, I've seen the evolution of these LED lights so that you can get a pretty strong light with relatively little power, and they last more or less forever. So that's definitely an energy saving development, and I guess there'll be a lot more to come that we don't even imagine right now.
Well, there's also bioluminescence the same way. There's also bioluminescence the same way an octopus changes color instantly, or animals deep in the ocean generate light. That uses a minuscule amount of power, and so if you use human-type power sources on something like that, you get a tremendous amount of light for a very small energy use. So, there are ways to get around it, but again, I suspect we always knew about, for example, or the myth of the 100-mile-a-gallon carburetor, where as soon as you invent something like that, the oil companies offer you a huge amount of money to buy up the patent, and it just sits on a shelf.
I knew a couple of con men. They were acquaintances of mine at a younger age, and they used to demonstrate something called the Sparkmaster. You would go to a county fair, and there'd be this exhibit. They'd have they'd have the hood of the car up, and they would show you this device that you simply lift the distributor cap off, insert the device, and then they would disconnect the spark plug leads one by one, and you'd swear the car was running like a top on just 2 cylinders, and that you were getting double the gas mileage and all that. But so far, all these devices that promised easy savings on fuel have turned out to be Carnival Midway devices. Not that we haven't made great strides in fuel economy, but it takes a lot of engineering to get just a little more gas economy at the margin.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead zinc silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineer gold mine in the Atlan district of northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, cybercurrencies are going absolutely off the charts. They seem to increase in value by hundreds of dollars a second sometimes. Are they the new tulips, the rage that went through Europe in the 1600s, where if you came out with a new colored tulip, it was worth a fortune? But of course, what were their real value apart from being pretty flowers?
Yeah, I think it's so directly comparable to the Dutch tulip mania, where people were paying the equivalent of the value of a house or of 2 years' labor just for one rare bulb. And, it had a very steep rise and fall. And I think Bitcoin is, I'm very skeptical, especially when they refer to Bitcoin as a mining operation. It takes a lot of processing power and electrical power to produce Bitcoin, and because there's a finite limit to the amount of Bitcoin that can be minted or mined, it's getting very power intensive right now to add Bitcoin. So, we're really at the threshold where Bitcoin's going to throttle itself off, and of course we just had I'm not sure if I'll call it a squandered opportunity, but they were going to lift the lid on Bitcoin so that a Bitcoin would be worth considerably more, which is, just another way of saying we need to inflate the supply here, or we need to inflate the price of it, really, just to accommodate all the demand. So, but there's so many variations on Bitcoin right now, and it's hard to know which of the competing cryptocurrencies is going to make inroads on Bitcoin. But I know that someone posted in my chat room this morning that hackers are already making pretty good inroads, and that there's no Bitcoin that's so secure that it hasn't been hacked yet. Some of the companies, I think it was Ethereum, had quite a bit of cryptocurrency theft. So, my feeling is, as long as they're Russian hackers, they're up to whatever ingenious security measures the cryptocurrency makers can create. So it's sort of a battle. But as you know, just with the antivirus software that you may have used, the bad guys are always one step ahead of the good guys.
Right, and sometimes I suspect the good guys are also the bad guys, because they have to encourage the sale of computer security equipment. So why not attack computers to encourage people to buy more of your product?
You hear that, and it's very tempting. It must be very tempting if you have those skills to play both sides of the market.
Yeah, I can see, an office building where one side's attacking, the other side's defending, like it's a big game.
Uh-huh. Well, there's no digital or computer system device that's so ingenious and secure that the Russians can't penetrate it. And of course, they're just one force. When you have state actors like North Korean computer scientists or whoever, it winds up being very hard to secure something like blockchain currencies that are supposed to be absolutely impregnable.
And two, when it comes to cryptocurrency, you never know if governments are not going to, at some point, either ban it or take it over. I mean, Russia apparently has now their own crypto ruble. What if everybody decided to have a cryptocurrency instead of a real currency?
Yeah, and when you mention this prospect of government regulation, it's one more reason why I'm thinking you got to be nuts to hold your net worth, your savings, or whatever in Bitcoin as opposed to in so many other media. Obviously, bullion is one of them, but why cryptocurrency would be the choice, I don't know. It doesn't even provide that opaque screen that a lot of criminal operators would like, because the whole point of a blockchain currency is that every single transaction is recorded so that we know how the ownership of Bitcoin is allocated. So why Bitcoin would be the natural choice? It's just, I guess, because it's new, it's interesting, and the millennials somehow think that it's better than whatever competing currencies are out there.
Well, there are newer cryptocurrencies that are more secure because, being newer, they've put more thought into security. Bitcoin now is kind of old school. I would think that would make it much more hackable because it's been around for so long.
Yeah, but however secure these newer currencies are, they're never going to be able to wall out Russian hackers. They're just too good, I mean, that's why I remember a story in the Wall Street Journal. There's some mud hole in outer Krasnoyarsk. This makes Siberia look like a spa. And in this little mud hole, the most successful auto dealership is the one that sells Lamborghinis. So it's kind of a Butch Cavendish hole in the wall thing, but there is where the state of the art is taught and practiced as far as hacking goes. And really, you're never, the good guys are always a step behind the bad guys, because we don't find out we've been hacked, or we don't know we've been hacked until after the fact.
Yeah, and at least if you have your money in a bank, you have government insurance, on your deposits up to $100,000. Whereas with cryptocurrency, there's no guarantees at all.
Well, I would trust cryptocurrencies before I would trust a government guarantee. Especially when you see the amounts that are insured. It's absurd. It's good enough to pay off a few isolated bank closures or whatever, but in a systemic failure, you better not be counting on your SIPC or your FDIC insurance.
Sure, we'll look at the panic in a little place like Cyprus had.
Right. We sort of learned that one little bank has ties to the rest of the world that could bring the rest of the world down.
Rick, anything else you wanted to bring up today?
Well, that's. I think we've had a very interesting discussion, Jim, as we usually do, thanks to your astute line of questioning. It seems like you're plugged into so many people out there with interesting things to say that you never run out of good questions.
I feel like I'm still in college, I learn so much every day from this stuff, so I hope our listeners do too.
Well, I do too from my own subscribers. My chat room is just filled with amazing expertise, and I'm always surprised when it surfaces that someone is the world's expert on 15th century Spanish armor or something like that.
Yeah, and how sometimes it applies to everyday life.
Sometimes it does, that's true.
Rick, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me on, Jim. I look forward to our next talk.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.